The weight had been settling on my shoulders for years, so gradually I barely noticed it piling up until it was crushing me. My name is Ethan, and I'm in my mid-40s. I'm not a superhero, not some business magnate, just a guy who worked his tail off, made some smart choices, and built a quiet, stable life for himself. What I built wasn't just for me, though. It became the unofficial infrastructure for my family. It started small, like these things always do. My mother needed help with a utility bill after a supposed unexpected expense. My brother, Liam, needed a few grand for a can't-miss investment opportunity. My cousin, Chloe, had a sudden medical emergency for her ridiculous French bulldog. I helped because, well, they were family, and I could. I earned decently, lived within my means. They didn't. Over time, the requests grew, the amounts got larger, and the unexpected emergencies became alarmingly frequent. I bought a duplex years ago as an investment, and when my mother's landlord sold her building, I offered her one unit, rent-free, just cover the utilities. That, just cover the utilities, quickly morphed into me covering them. Liam's car died. He needed a reliable one for a new job he was starting. I co-signed a significant loan and ended up making the payments when the new job lasted 3 weeks. Chloe needed a new phone, a new laptop, help with rent emergencies that always seemed to coincide with her expensive trips or concert tickets. I became the first number dialed when money was tight, the silent provider who fixed things without asking questions. The conversations always had a familiar cadence, a slightly frantic tone, a story of misfortune, never their fault, always external, and then the hesitant ask, followed by profuse promises to pay me back as soon as things turn around. Things never turn around. You get used to it. You rationalize. They're struggling. Family helps family. At least they come to me instead of going into debt elsewhere. But deep down, the resentment simmers. You see them making poor choices, living beyond their means, and it stings because your hard-earned money is funding it. You start noticing they only call when they need something. The casual check-ins disappear. You're not family. You're the family bank, the safety net they abuse with impunity. I'd thought about setting boundaries, drawn lines in the sand in my head 100 times. Next time, I'll say no. They need to learn to manage. But then the call would come, laced with panic or a carefully constructed sob story, and the guilt or the sheer exhaustion of arguing would win. Mark, my best friend, saw it happening. Ethan, he'd say, shaking his head, you're enabling them. You're their infrastructure, not their equal. He was right, of course, but admitting it felt like admitting I was a doormat. My early 40s birthday was coming up. I didn't want a big fuss. Just a simple dinner at Amici's, a decent Italian place I liked. I thought maybe they'd show up for me, just to spend time without needing anything. I sent a text to the family group chat. Hey everyone, thinking of booking a table at Amici's next Friday for my birthday dinner. Nothing fancy, just good food and catching up. Let me know if you can make it. I even added, my treat, of course, because honestly, expecting them to pay for their own meal on my birthday dinner felt like asking for the moon. The replies trickled in over the next 2 weeks, a familiar pattern of non-committal vagueness. Mother, sounds lovely, sweetie. I'll try my best. Liam, might be able to swing it, man. Depends on my schedule. Chloe, OMG fun. Let me check my calendar. We'll get back to you. Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert, who I didn't hear from often but were technically family, said, sounds nice, Ethan, pencil us in. Pencil us in, right? By the day of the dinner, I had Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert as the only soft maybes. Everyone else had faded into silence or vague, still checking. Still, I held on to that sliver of hope. I dressed up, put on a shirt I liked, headed to Amici's. I got there a little early, confirmed the reservation for 10 people, optimistic, maybe even foolishly hopeful. The hostess led me to a nice, large table by the window. 10 place settings. It looked expectant. I sat down, sipping water, trying to ignore the other tables filled with laughter and conversation. The time came and went. No one. At 6:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. Hey man, something came up. We'll celebrate another time. I read it. Flat. Impersonal. No apology, no explanation. Just that. 5 minutes later, another buzz. My mother. Same exact words. Hey, sweetie, something came up. We'll celebrate another time. My breath hitched. That was weird. Then Chloe. Identical text. Aunt Susan. Identical text. Uncle Robert. Identical text. One by one, the same bland, dismissive message hitting my phone like cold drops of water. Something came up. We'll celebrate another time. My fingers felt numb as I stared at the screen, scrolling through the chain of identical texts. It wasn't just laziness. It was coordinated. It was a script. They couldn't even be bothered to come up with different lies. I stayed. I ordered a pasta dish I didn't even want, told the waiter I was expecting company, that they were just running late. He nodded politely, his eyes holding that universal look of pity you see when someone is publicly, quietly disappointed. I ate alone. I paid the bill for 10 imaginary people, left a larger tip than necessary, mostly out of solidarity with the waiter. I walked out into the cool evening air with a box of untouched leftovers and a feeling that wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was colder. A profound, icy stillness had settled over me. I got in my car, the engine running, the quiet hum a stark contrast to the silence inside me. I scrolled through my phone, not even looking at anything, just needing to occupy my hands. And that's when I saw it. Chloe's Instagram story. Videos, boomerangs, photos, balloons everywhere, streamers, little party hats perched on people's heads, and one specifically on a French bulldog. There was a cake shaped like a bone. People were laughing, holding up little cups of something bubbly, and their faces. I zoomed in. Mother, laughing, cake smear on her cheek. Liam, looking relaxed, tying a ribbon around the dog's neck. Chloe, posing with the dog like it was her child. And in the background, unmistakable, Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert, holding drinks, chatting. The caption, Happy Birthday, Nibbles. So much fun, Nibbles. The dog. They had bailed on my birthday dinner with a coordinated impersonal excuse to go to a dog's birthday party. All of them, including the ones who had penciled me in. Something inside me clicked, a final tumblers falling into place. The coldness intensified, sharpening into a laser focus. There was no thought, no hesitation. My fingers moved. I opened my banking app. Navigate to scheduled transfers. Mother's rent payment for the duplex. Cancel. Liam's monthly car payment. Cancel. Mother's utility autodraft. Cancel. Chloe's phone bill. Cancel. Any other recurring payments or transfers I handle for them. Cancel. All of them. Then, the utility company dashboard. Scheduled shutoffs from Mother's address. Gas, electricity, water. Effective by morning. I sat there for a long time in the dark parking lot, the phone screen aglow in the car. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but full of a quiet power. Finally, I reached my keychain. Found the spare key for Liam's car, the one I kept just in case. Took it off the ring. Put it in my jacket pocket. I drove home with my headlights off. The streets were dark, quiet. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't rage in the group chat. I just drove, letting the silence amplify the shift that had happened inside me. Let them wonder. Let them face the consequences of their actions, or rather, their utter lack of consideration. The next morning, my phone became a hot potato. Calls and texts flooded in starting before sunrise. My mother first, then Liam, then Chloe, then others. I didn't answer. I watched the group chat. Initial confusion. Anyone else having trouble with utilities? Did the bank mess up autopay for mom's rent? My phone's not working. The questions escalated into frantic demands directed at me. Nate, are you awake? What's going on? Ethan, pick up. Then came the text from Liam that sealed it, that crystallized their entire perspective into 5 words. Bro, what's going on? The dog party was kind of last minute. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word landed like a physical blow. Not because it hurt, but because it perfectly encapsulated their complete lack of self-awareness and the depth of their entitlement. A dog party was kind of last minute, a lie. I later found out they planned it for weeks, timing it on my birthday weekend, and I was overreacting to being ditched for it after years of financial support. It wasn't just dismissal, it was gaslighting. My mother posted a cryptic status on Facebook that afternoon. Some people will punish you just for not being available on their schedule. Remember, family isn't conditional. It was a clear jab at me, fishing for sympathy while twisting the narrative. Aunt Susan, bless her passive-aggressive heart, commented, maybe if you appreciated the people who help you, they'd still be available. A small ripple in the echo chamber, but I saw it. I realized then I wasn't just cutting off financial support. I was dismantling the structure that allowed them to ignore me as a person while relying on me as a resource. Mark called. I finally answered. I told him everything. The texts, the dog party, the cancellations. A dog party, Ethan? Seriously? His disbelief was validating. They see you as their personal ATM, man. You're not overreacting. You're finally closing the bank. The voicemails started piling up. Liam's were a mix of anger, confusion, and bizarre attempts to turn it back on me. You always hold money over our heads, Nate, he yelled in one message. Being responsible doesn't make you a villain, Liam, I muttered to my silent phone. My mother's were a study in manipulative extremes. The first, sickly sweet and concerned, pleading with me to call her. The second, hours later, venomous. I don't know what kind of grudge you're holding, but punishing your own mother? That's a new low, even for you. A new low? My silent fury hardened further. I knew this was just the beginning. They wouldn't give up easily. I started systematically reviewing every tie I had to them that involved money or assets. I canceled the phone plan Chloe and Liam were on under my name. I didn't warn them. Just logged in, removed them from the account. I imagined Chloe's face the next time she tried to post a selfie from her fabulous life and got a no-service message. Liam's car was next. He still had the primary key, assuming I'd never actually take the spare. On Saturday night, I drove over to his place, parked down the street, walked up his driveway. His second-hand Audi, the one I'd co-signed for and effectively paid for, was sitting there unlocked. I opened the door with my spare key, got in, and drove away. It was messy inside, fast food wrappers everywhere, another small disrespect. I drove it back to my place. I found his other car, the ancient clunker with a broken tail light he never drove, parked near the street. I left a sticky note on the windshield. Since I'm just infrastructure, consider this a budget cut. By Monday, Liam was posting about family loyalty on Facebook, not tagging me, of course, but everyone knew. His girlfriend commented, "You deserve better, babe. Better than the brother who paid your bills, funded your moves, and covered your medical emergencies." The hypocrisy was staggering. But the biggest move was reserved for my mother's duplex. I own it outright, but the lease was in my name for legal reasons when I'd offered her the rent-free arrangement years ago. It had been a handshake deal, just help your family. For years, I'd covered taxes, maintenance, repairs. Now, I typed up a formal notice, addressed to current occupant at her address, dated it, stated that the current informal arrangement was terminated. The occupant had 30 days to vacate or enter into a formal lease agreement at fair market rent, effective immediately. I attached photos of the property, a sample lease, and my bank account details. I emailed it to myself and then forwarded it to my mother's primary email address. No personal note, just the formal document. Her reaction was swift and volcanic. Within 48 hours, my inbox had an email with the subject line, "Wow, really?" The body was a furious, rambling screed accusing me of being heartless, cruel, kicking my own mother out onto the street. She portrayed herself as a frail, elderly woman. She's in her early 70s, perfectly capable. It felt like I'd kicked over a beehive. They couldn't understand. They saw this as punishment for one mistake, the birthday dinner. They started twisting the narrative, portraying me as a villain who had suddenly abandoned his family. But the birthday wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment I stopped closing my eyes. I started pulling up old texts, old emails, bank statements. The one mistake. There weren't one. There were hundreds. Liam's car loan for his new job. I found texts confirming he'd quit that job before the first payment was due, and records showing he'd immediately sold the Audi I funded and used the money for something else entirely. A ridiculous, short-lived crypto scheme. Chloe's medical emergency, vet bill for nibbles. I found her post from the exact same week. Photos from a weekend getaway at a spa resort hours away. The money I wired her went directly to funding her little vacation. Mother's urgent. needs, like the water getting shut off. I found old emails hinting at gambling debts she'd accrued and lied about, needing cash quickly before my routine transfers would arrive. Every time I didn't ask questions. Every time I filled the silence with trust and got drained. The worst part wasn't their actions, though. It was the guilt they'd instilled in me, the quiet voice that whispered I was selfish, that if I stopped helping, I would be the bad guy, that maybe I wasn't worth anything to them unless I was useful. But sitting in my apartment, reviewing the cold, hard facts, the screenshots of their lies, the identical texts, the photos of the dog party, the desperate, angry voicemails, the guilt started to loosen its grip. Guilt only works when you believe you owe them something. I didn't. Not anymore. Just when the initial storm seemed to subside slightly, there was a knock at my door. Not frantic, but steady. I opened it. Liam stood there. His hoodie was pulled up, his eyes bloodshot, from stress, not tears. He looked rough. "You took my car," he said. No greeting, no apology, just that accusation. I leaned against the doorframe, calm. "Technically my car, but go on." His jaw was tight. "This isn't how you fix things, man." I almost laughed, a humorless puff of air. "Fix things? You mean how you all lied, ditched me on my birthday, and partied for a literal dog? That wasn't the plan." "Tasha, save it." I cut him off. "You could have called. You didn't. You could have texted something real. You didn't. You could have shown up at Amici's. You didn't. But now you want to talk because the gravy train came off the rails." He flinched. "Good." He rubbed his temple. "Look, we messed up. I get it. But you don't have to burn everything down just to prove a point." I stared at him flatly. "No," I said. "I don't have to. I want to." And I closed the door softly. It wasn't over. They were desperate now, and desperate people do unpredictable things. A few days later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. My name scrawled in my mother's familiar cursive. Inside, a handwritten letter, 2 pages. Folded inside was a faded photo of me as a child, maybe 5 or 6, smiling in front of a birthday cake, my mother standing behind me, hands on my shoulders, the picture of a perfect parent. The letter began, "I don't know when you became this cold, Nathan, but I miss my son." She still used my old name, Nathan, sometimes. It was a classic manipulative piece, recounting childhood sacrifices, how much she did for me, how she never asked for anything but love. She brought up losing my father too soon, raising us boys alone. Then the pivot. "You always seemed to understand, Nate. That's what made you special. You were the strong one. You never complained. You just helped. You always helped." That part stung, deep down. Because she was right. I did help. But not out of strength. Out of obligation, fear, a twisted belief that if I didn't carry their weight, no one else would, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't worth anything unless I was useful. She ended with a plea, wrapped in martyrdom. "I hope you find your way back to this family before it's too late. We still love you, even if you've forgotten how to love us back." It was a guilt grenade wrapped in nostalgia. For a second, the old strings pulled. Then I looked at the photo. My 5th birthday. I remembered it. The cake. But I also remembered it ended with me crying, the cake smashed because Liam had thrown something, and my mother scolding me for making a scene. The photo was a single, framed moment before the yelling started. A memory weaponized. That was the final snap. The next morning, I put the letter and photo in a box and dropped it off on her porch. No note, no conversation. Silence returned for manipulation. They escalated. They sent reinforcements. Not Liam this time. Someone meant to seem reasonable, or perhaps intimidating. Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert called, asking to meet for coffee. I agreed, morbidly curious. At the cafe, they were uncomfortable. They didn't sit like family catching up, but like reluctant negotiators. "Ethan," Aunt Susan started, wringing her hands, "your mother's beside herself. Liam is struggling. We just think you should talk to them. This is family." Uncle Robert added, "You're hurting people who love you. This isn't how family handles things." I looked at them calm. "Isn't it? Is this how family handles things, Aunt Susan? Sending identical, pre-written text to cancel on someone's birthday? Uncle Robert, is it family to lie about needing money for emergencies when you're funding spa trips and crypto scams? Is it family to use someone until they're empty and then call them overreacting? They shifted, uncomfortable. We didn't know about all that, Aunt Susan mumbled, though their presence at the dog party Instagram photos told a different story. Maybe not the details, I conceded. But you knew the pattern. You saw it happening. You chose to look away. You chose to enable them with your silence. And now you're here enabling them with your words. Uncle Robert's face hardened slightly. We came because we care. Don't isolate yourself, Ethan. You'll find yourself all alone. Alone, I repeated, the word feeling strangely light. I've been alone at a table for 10, paying for people who were partying for a dog. I think I'm already quite familiar with being alone in this family. And frankly, it's less lonely than being used. I finished my coffee. I have nothing more to say. I left them sitting there, looking stunned and uncomfortable. But the escalation wasn't over. A couple of days later, I started getting notification from my bank. Attempted logins. Password reset requests. Access denied. Again and again. Someone was trying to get into my accounts. I immediately changed everything. Increased security, flagged my accounts. They weren't just trying emotional manipulation anymore. They were getting desperate, potentially criminal. It confirmed what Mark had said. I closed the bank, and now they were trying to break in. Then came the message that felt like the final, desperate punch. It was from Mother, a long, rambling text. It cycled through all her usual tactics, but ended with a sentence that chilled me to the bone, not with fear, but with the pure, cold malice it contained. You're making your choices now, Nathan. Just remember, when I'm gone, you'll be all alone. You'll regret abandoning your mother and your family. You'll have no one left. When I'm gone, the ultimate manipulation. The threat of future guilt, wielded like a weapon. She wasn't just threatening me with loneliness. She was explicitly linking my value to her existence and my willingness to be controlled. It was their final, twisted play. The ultimate revelation wasn't a secret, but the stark, undeniable truth of how they saw family. Not as a bond of mutual love and respect, but as a debt, a tool, a resource to be used until it's depleted. And if the resource fought back, they'd threaten it with isolation and future regret. I stared at the text for a long time. There was no rage left, just a profound, quiet sadness for the family I thought I had, and the reality of the transaction I was actually part of. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My actions had already spoken volumes. The consequences for them were real. The duplex situation was proceeding. Mother was facing eviction or the prospect of paying market rent she couldn't afford. Liam had no car and no money for payments. Utilities were being cut off. Their comfortable, subsidized lives were collapsing, and there was nothing I could do or would do to stop it. The silence from my phone became more consistent, punctuated only by occasional, desperate attempts to contact me through other numbers or intermediaries. I ignored them all. It wasn't a triumphant ending. There was no grand victory parade, just quiet, and a new kind of loneliness when I had chosen. The loneliness of standing alone, finally free from the weight that had burdened me for years. Free from the guilt, the obligation, the constant draining of my resources and spirit. Free from being their infrastructure. Was it worth it? Losing my family, such as they were? Facing the possibility of being truly alone? I don't know. The future feels uncertain, and the emotional cost is high. But as I sit in my quiet apartment, the phone's silent beside me, I also feel something else I haven't felt in a long time. Lighter. And that, I think, is worth something. The debate rages in my head, just as it likely does for anyone hearing this story. Did I go too far? Was there another way? Maybe. But they pushed me to the edge, and when I finally stood up for myself, their true colors were revealed. And those colors weren't the warm hues of family, but the cold, hard glint of transactional entitlement. And I couldn't be part of that anymore. Not even for a dog party.